All right, Shalom. This is brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rukah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Aquath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of the one they ignorantly call God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the one they ignorantly call Jesus. Bahashem is in the name. Rakah is spirit. Kodash is holy. Akyam is brothers. Akwath is sisters. Shalom means peace. And Yasher Allah is Israel in ancient Paleo Hebrew. All right, now I want to go into a lesson through the spirit inspired by this video from Professor Sam Vaknin. It says the rich have brainwashed. Capitalism is a zero-sum game. They win, you lose. All right, and I got another video as well through the spirit. But again, these things are coming out through the spirit to highlight the fact that this is not our rest. The reality is that the Lord didn't bring us here to sow our royal oats, if you will, and have generational wealth here. We were brought here for discipline. Before I begin, this is Micah chapter 2 and verse 10. And it reads, Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with the sore destruction. This is also Deuteronomy 12 and 9. It says, For ye are not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance which the Lord your God giveth you. All right, we haven't gotten to that point yet. All right, this place is a pit stop. It's not our final destination. All right, and what he's going to point out is that the system of capitalism, in a nutshell, all right, especially here in Babylon the Great, is a zero-sum game, which means one person gets richer and another person loses. But that's not the game that they tell you you're playing. All right, and at this point, even Edomites are in the food chain. All right, which is why you're going to have sedition at a certain point, because they're going to realize that the game has been stolen from them as well. The privilege that they once enjoyed is being taken from them by the rich of their own people. All right, so without further ado, Lord willing this be edifying, I want to get the first couple minutes, and then I'll grab some scriptures.
2 points that I've made in my lecture in Euro College and set the record straight. Also, possibly open up your mind to reality and the facts. I don't know which planet you're coming from. It's not mine. Okay, first of all, who am I to talk about economics? Am I not a professor of psychology? What do I know about economics? Well, here's a surprise for you. I've spent the first 30 years of my adult life in the field of business, finance, and economics. I've been a businessman. I've been a stockbroker. I've been a venture capitalist. I've been an entrepreneur. And for well over 30 years, I served as economic advisor to 8 governments, big, very big, small, on 3 continents. I have written 300 papers and articles in various economic fields, and I've published 6 books on economics. I think I'm mildly qualified to discuss economics.
Hey, because when brothers talk about these things, beginning with our apostles on down, our people look at, you know, um, this truth, and they look at brothers in general as men of no renown, as men of no knowledge and understanding. But this guy, all right, he went through his credentials, and that's why I wanted to take the time to have him explain his own credentials, because ultimately, he's not saying anything different concerning prophecy that isn't already being said on the highways and hedges, beginning with our apostles. All right, that this system is not set up for you to win as a nation of people. You were brought here for captivity ultimately. All right, and this guy is a very decorated guy, if you will, concerning economics. All right, let's get this real quick. This is Psalms chapter 64 and 8, and it reads, "So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away." Now, the reason I bring that precept out is because, he kind of explained it, but this is the Google edition of who he is. Sam Vaknin, Israeli writer, all right, Israeli writer and professor of psychology. All right, he's the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, was the latest editor-in-chief of the now defunct political news website Global Politician, and runs a private website about narcissistic personality disorder. All right, but among those things, he also went over his other credentials. So I just wanted to touch that through the spirit to show that, this Edomite, is a qualified, what appears to be an Edomite, is qualified to speak on the subject. All right, and it shows you that their tongue is falling upon themselves. All right, so I want to continue.
Okay, one point before we go to the main issue. Donald Trump. I said in the lecture that poor people voted for Donald Trump, and immediately all the Trump cult members started to attack me that it's not true. Poor people voted for Hillary Clinton. Well, here are the facts. 40% of people with income under $50,000 and also with income under $30,000 in both these demographic groups. That's 40%. That's almost half voted for Donald Trump. So many of these people are defined as poor. They're under the poverty line. And yet 40% of them voted for Donald Trump. Came as a major shock to the Democratic Party, by the way. 70%, that's 70% of people without a college degree, people who have graduated high school or not even that, voted for Donald Trump. A majority of blue-collar, working-class whites voted for Donald Trump.
Now, why is that, right? Because ultimately Trump is their hope. Their hope that they'll be able to get that privilege back. All right, because at this point, that privilege is being taken from them by their own people. All right, when you hear the term drain the swamp, get rid of these career politicians, really you hear a lot of Edomites talking about that because again, they're starting to feel it. They're starting to feel it. The mortgage is getting high, the car notes are starting to the bills are piling up and they're starting to feel the effects of all of that. And that's why they're putting all of their bets on Trump. All right. Now, keep in mind, these are Edomites stealing from Edomites. All right. It wasn't a problem when they were stealing from Jake, but now that they're stealing from their own, all right, it's going to ultimately lead into sedition. All right. Real quick, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 14 and verse 3. It says, riches are not comely for a niggard, and what should an envious man do with money? He that gathereth by defrauding his own soul, gathereth for others that shall spend his goods riotously. He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods. There is none worse than he that envieth himself, and this is a recompense of his wickedness. All right, because now they've stolen from everybody, and now they've gotten to the point where they're stealing from each other. All right, and this is the big war of classism, if you will. All right, it's really Edomites on Edomites. All right, let me see if I can get that real quick. So the definition of classism is this. It says prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class. So at this point, they've put the average Edomite in the class of everybody else. All right, at a certain point, they held a certain privilege along with the rich Edomites, but now that privilege is being taken away from them. This is why when Jake talk about so-called white privilege, the first one to say something about it is these middle class and poor Edomites, because they understand that the wealth that they had, it doesn't exist anymore. They're struggling just like Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and some of them are struggling even worse. All right, and what this guy's pointing out first and foremost is that there's a game being played right now where the super rich, the wealthy, are getting richer and they're putting their own people in the food chain. And this is why he's mentioning 70% of matter of fact, I want to run that back. He mentioned 70% of whites voted for Trump concerning the working class, concerning the ones who haven't had college education and things of that nature, because they are under the impression, rightfully so, that their own people, the elites of their people, are stealing from them. All right, so let's continue.
Who have graduated high school or not even that, voted for Donald Trump. A majority of blue-collar, working-class whites voted for Donald Trump. These are the facts.
So the working class Edomites, 70% of them voted for, Donald J. Trump. And that's because they believe that he's going to be the one to redistribute what they've stolen. All right. And that's not going to happen. And this is why this scripture is, according to prophecy, these things are going to lead to sedition. All right. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. All right, so I want to continue, Lord willing.
Donald Trump swept the slate mainly with uneducated, underpaid, blue-collar workers. While technically and clinically not poor, they are still not exactly the aristocracy, and they're definitely not educated. In addition to that, 40% of people with very low incomes, annual incomes, have voted for him. So I don't feel that I've misled you in any major way. Now let's get to the main point. The main argument that many of you have made is that capitalism is not a zero-sum game. Let me explain what is a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game is when, let me see that I'm still recording. Yeah. A zero-sum game is when my gain is your loss. If I make $10, you lose $10. Your $10 enter my pocket, never to re-emerge. That's a zero-sum game. Win, lose, lose, win. No one can win without someone else losing. No one can lose without someone else winning. That's a zero-sum game. Now, the elites, especially rich people, want you to believe that capitalism is not a zero-sum game. They want you to believe that everyone in capitalism can win simultaneously. And this is the false hope that fuels the much tarnished and totally delusional and counterfactual American dream.
And see, our people fall victim to this more so than anybody else. All right, because they have this idea that they're going to be able to pull themselves up, and that's because that's the narrative that's been told to them, that they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And this is why our people have vain hope in this place. All right, matter of fact, let's go here. This is Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17. And it reads, as for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. All right, and that's ultimately what our people are doing. All right, they have this vain idea of being successful in Babylon the Great when it's not set up that way. All right, real quick, there's Jeremiah 4 and 14. O Jerusalem, wash thine heart from wickedness, that thou mayest be saved. How long shall thy vain thoughts lodge within thee? All right, because our people have this idea, and it's because it's been fed to them that through hard labor, they can work themselves into rest. But this place is not designed for your rest. All right. And he's really pointing out that it's not designed for even an average Edomite. It's not designed for their rest. Because now we're getting to classism, where these Edomites are stealing from their own working class people, man. This is why 70% of working class Edomites voted for Trump, because they believe he's going to save them. They believe that he'll be able to restore the privilege that they once experienced. And it's not going to happen. And it's going to force them to, it's going to force them into sedition. All right. So, Lord willing, let me continue.
The truth is that capitalism is definitely a zero-sum game, as I will explain in a minute. The truth is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, relatively speaking, because it's a zero-sum game. Now, they don't want you to believe this. They're brainwashing you. They want to give you false hope because they are terrified of social unrest, rebellion, French revolutions, Russian revolutions, and revolutions in general.
Here's how I get
The fact is that social mobility in the United States of America is lower than it is in all socialist industrialized countries, such as the countries of Scandinavia, such as France, such as Germany, such as Canada. What is social mobility? Social mobility is when you make more money than your parents. Social mobility is when you end up with more wealth than your parents. Social mobility is when you're more educated than your parents. Social mobility is when you end up on a higher rung in the social ladder than your parents. In America, this is nearly impossible. The figures, the numbers, the statistics, the studies are clear cut, unequivocal, unambiguous, indisputable, non debatable. People in America remain stuck in the same social economic stratum, in the same social economic level they were born into. If you're born into a poor family, in vast majority of cases, you will end up your life poor or even poorer than your parents. If you're born into a rich family, obviously you will end up rich. End of story. No amount of education and hard work will get you anywhere. That's why student loans are such a problem. Nothing. It's nonsense. It's an illusion. It's a delusion. It's a lie. It's a fabrication and a deception of the elites who are trying to mislead you, trying to keep you tranquil and quiet, trying to avoid your wrath. Because
So real quick, I want to go into that through the Spirit because, again, let's go here. Let's go to Jeremiah 50 and 6. Because what happens is how this affects Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans is that the ones who are set up, the ones that you hear from most concerning Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are athletes, musicians, celebrities, etc., they're not set up to tell you the real. They're set up to keep you in that docile state of mind, to keep the game going. All right, this is Jeremiah 50 and 6. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray, and they have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place. And see, the shepherds, all right, if you will, are these guys that our people look up to. All right, they don't tell you the information that we're getting from a qualified economist about the reality of our situation as a nation of people. You know, instead, they're set up to prop up this illusion that one day you too can make it. All right. And the reality is that that's not the case. And at this point, it's not even the case for the average Edomite, the average so called white person in this society. The likelihood of them being able to climb the status quo is nearly impossible because when he's talking about this, he's not talking about Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans exclusively. He's talking about, generally speaking, in Babylon the Great, which is America, the ability for you to go from one social class to another is nearly impossible. This don't even account for you being a Negro, Latino, or Native American here. This is just generally speaking, which shows you how much worse it is for you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans when you're able to read between the lines. There was a saying in the world, you know, when an Edomite catch a cold, when a white person catch a cold, when the white man catch a cold, the black man catches the flu, which basically means when the society gets bad for them, it gets worse for you because you're the most vulnerable concerning this society. And this was intentional. The Lord did this intentionally. All right, let's go here. It's Isaiah chapter 42 and 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes. All right, and part of those snares is the idea that you'll be able to climb the social ladder, that you'll be able to rise above the stigma of being a Negro, Latino, or Native American here. All right, that's a part of the snare, along with the debt, all right, along with student loans, along with the prison industrial complex, you name it. Our people are snared in these holes. Materialism, all right, it says, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith, restore. You have to ask yourself, the one nation of people that's the worst off here, why are they the most optimistic? Because they're led as a prey, easily deceived, all right, gullible, docile, all right. And this is why the Lord describes us as sheep, all right. So I want to go back to this video. I'll get a couple more minutes on it, and then I got another video, Lord willing.
Because if you were to see the true picture, you would storm all the bastions of the elites and demolish them and their inhabitants. Keep you tranquil and quiet, trying to avoid your and hard work, and will get you anywhere. That's why student loans are such a problem. Nothing. It's nonsense. It's an illusion. It's a delusion. It's a lie. It's a fabrication and a deception of the elites who are trying to mislead you, trying to keep you tranquil and quiet, trying to avoid your wrath. Because if you were to see the true picture, you would storm all the bastions of the elites and demolish them and their inhabitants.
And see, that brings us to prophecy, right? That brings us right to prophecy. And he said that if the world, if the American population, all right, Babylon the Great, if they knew the truth, they would storm these places. And you saw a glimpse of that with the January 6th situation. But when they see that the hope that they've placed in Donald J does not work out in their favor, it's going to get ugly, all right? Because they're even though they're poor Edomites, they're still Edomites. So they all operate the same way, all right? When the words don't work, they go for their main weapon, which is the sword, all right? When the secondary weapon, which is the sword of the tongue, doesn't work, they pull out the physical sword, all right? Going back again to 2nd Esdras, chapter 15, and I'll just get the point at verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. And why is that? Because they're going to bring in the law, all right, martial, and they're going to shut this thing down. But ultimately, these are the steps, all right? And how this affects our people is because our people are led astray. They believe that the American dream is conceivable, all right? And that is the narrative. But this economist is saying that that is not the case when you look at the numbers. But before we were able to look at the numbers, the Lord had already told us this, man. The Lord had already told us this. But it shows you how stiff-necked our people are, that the people, they don't believe Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans that the Lord has called, beginning with our apostles on down to warn our people. And then they won't even believe the ones that are set up with the information, which shows you our people are just rebellious, man. All right, so I'll get a little bit more on this, and then I got one more video.
They don't want it. They want you immersed in a fantasy, a matrix type reality. They keep feeding you through their tubes all these inane delusions and hallucinations. I repeat, studies, all studies, there's not a single exception inside the United States and outside the United States, show conclusively that your chance to move up in life in the United States is the lowest among industrialized countries, period. And that includes countries whose system is basically socialist. And so there's no American dream. It's an American hallucination, not a dream. And this sits well with the assumption that capitalism is a zero-sum game, because had capitalism not been a zero-sum game, social mobility would have been higher in countries which are more capitalistic. Had capitalism not been a zero-sum game, you would have expected to see people progressing, moving up in life much more in capitalist countries than in socialist countries.
And what's happening is the opposite. All right, these average Edomites are losing out here, man. All right, and they're feeling it. They're seeing it. This is Deuteronomy 30:7. And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. All right. And this is exactly what you're starting to see. The average working Edomite is suffering. And this is why it's ultimately going to equal up to sedition, man. All right. And he's explaining it, very, very educated, if you will. But you don't even need that. It's obvious. Your life is a very testament of it. It shouldn't take these type of guys to open our people's eyes, but a lot of times it does, because they believe Esau more than they believe Yahweh Shem Shai. But even you know, the Lord's so beautiful, he'll have an Edomite tell him. And they still won't believe it. All right. And this is beautiful because he's highlighting very important things, especially with distractions, because that's what our people, the biggest business for you to become rich as a Negro, Latino, or a Native American is to invest in the distractions, to be an athlete, to be a musician, to be a celebrity, a comedian. Those are all industries of distraction. They hold no relevance in society. And our people, those are the driving billboards of success, if you will. And those are just high servant positions of distraction, man. All right. And I want to go into this through the spirit because I have another video that points to how this affects Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And a lot of the information that we've received is just false. All right. Concerning black power, buying power, and all of these different terms that our people use, which gives our people a false sense of hope. They're all just fallacies. All right. So I'm going to play a little bit more of this and I'm going to move on, Lord willing.
But that's not the case. That's not the case. When the country is purely capitalistic or highly capitalistic or more capitalistic, people's positions are fixed for life. They can't move up. There's no redistribution of wealth. There's no division of accumulated profits and so on. The rich take it all. The rich take it all. Read my lips. The rich take it all. The statistics are breathtaking. The upper 1% control more wealth than the lower 67%. This is income inequality is mind-boggling. Is mind-boggling. It's never been worse since the 1920s, at least. So, most wealth in the West is not made. It is inherited. That is the work of Thomas Piketty, the French.
All right. And this is the point that I wanted to get to. All right. He said most wealth is not worked for, it's inherited. All right. Which goes back to what? How this place started. And it's been passed down through all of these generations to where we are now. And again, even in 2024, he's talking about a study that was done by a guy named, he mentioned his name, Thomas Piketty. All right. Now, Thomas Piketty wrote a book. Let me see if I can grab it. Yeah. So this is the guy he mentioned, Thomas Piketty, and this is the book that he's referencing, Capital in the 21st Century. All right. And Thomas Piketty did a study where he showed that most wealth is through inheritance. All right. That's why he paraphrased it. He kind of mentioned it in passing. All right. Now, a quick article on an interview with that same author, Thomas Piketty. I'll just get this quick question. It says, you seem to have taken to heart some of the limitations of capital in the 21st century. One that you frequently acknowledge is the last book's Western-centric focus and what you've called its black box treatment of the political and ideological changes associated with inequality. How have you tried to rectify those shortcomings? Here's the point. First, I show you how the rise of inequality in Western societies was very much rooted in a system of world domination and of colonial domination and colonial appropriation. It's a theme that was present a little bit, but was not very well developed. So now I insist on the importance of slave societies and post-slavery colonial societies in the formation of modern equality. What does that mean? That means what happened to Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, how we got here, has relevance today. All right. It says it played a very big role, and in particular, the large wealth portfolio of European society in the 19th century and early 20th century came from colonial wealth and colonial appropriation. So it's beautiful, right? It's a trickle down effect. First, we were brought here, they were able to enrich themselves, and now we're getting into the end game, if you will, of the elites, which is to take it from their own people. It's really beautiful when you look at it because it's a snare. This is how they started. So now it's starting to affect them, beginning with the common version of them. All right, real quick. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 21 and 3. It says, all iniquity is as a two-edged sword, the wounds whereof cannot be healed. And see, they started off like that. All right? They started off like that. All right, real quick, I want to grab this. This is Habakkuk chapter 2 and 12. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood and establisheth a city by iniquity. So now it's coming around full circle. All right, this is why in Ecclesiastes 21 and 3, it says, all iniquity is as a two-edged sword, the wounds whereof cannot be healed. Here's the point: to terrify and do wrong will waste riches. Thus the house of proud men shall be made desolate. And it's beginning with the poor Edomites and the middle class Edomites. Their own people are stealing from them. All right. Now, how does this affect Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans? It shows that what our people are hopeful for is vain. It's a vain hope. Our people have hope in very vain things on this side of life. All right. And the Lord has made it plain, but our people are very rebellious. I won't even say ignorant. They're rebellious because in order for you to rebel, you have to know the right way to go and not acknowledge it. All right. So what he's pointing out, what this author pointed out was that all of the wealth that you deal with really came from how they built this city. All right, I want to continue. It says it also played a big role in this private ownership society in the 20th century. The international dimension and the colonial dimension of the inequality regime of the 19th and early, 19th century and early 20th century is very important in order to better understand the origin of the transformation that finally took place in the 20th century. So it was built on the black backs of Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And now we're at the point where they're taking it from each other. It's beautiful, man. All right. It's beautiful. A house divided against itself. All right. Real quick. This is Ecclesiastes 10 and 8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. All right. Now, the last clip or video, if you will, that I have is from Richard Wolff. All right. Old Richard Wolff. And he's talking to a Jake named Jared Ball. And I'll just get the first couple minutes and then we'll close it out with this, Lord willing.
Welcome back, friends, to the second half of today's economic update. I am very proud to bring to our microphones and to our cameras Jared Ball. He is professor of communication and Africana studies at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, and author of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. Ball also hosts the podcast I Mix What I Like. He's a co-founder of Black Power Media, which can be found at blackpowermedia.org, and he can be found at I Mix What I Like on most social media. He has done decades of emancipatory journalism, and that too can be found at imixwhatilike.org. So first of all, welcome, Jared. I hope you don't mind if I call you Jared so that we can get to the business of talking about what needs some discussion.
No, right on. It's an honor, and I thank you and your staff and your audience for hosting me.
Good. All right, let me start. The phrase Black buying power, and more broadly, the phrase Black capitalism, has been offered as a path to economic and social justice for African Americans. Can you tell us a little bit about these concepts and what you think of them in that context?
Well, the short answer, working backwards, is I think they're horrible, and they are concepts that have been imposed by design by the ruling elite to discourage Black populations from radically organizing for political power. So buying power, as I'm sure you and others are aware, has its own history in association with cost of living surveys, in an attempt to manage the sort of pressure point at which those who rule could pay their workers without the workers earning enough to not be workers, but earning enough to buy what they are producing, thereby keeping the economy going. And out of that came, again, cost of living surveys, buying power, and buying power as a subset as a concept. over time, particularly after the Second World War, and then really again during the Nixon administration as a subset of the Black capitalist ethic and promotional campaign, Black buying power became weaponized and targeted as a concept to Black communities, again, as a subset of the Black capitalist mythology and ethic and propaganda to discourage Black people from being critical of capitalism as an economy and thinking that they can find their salvation in it by just increasing things like quote unquote financial literacy, so-called behavior, consumption behavior, and so on. But in reality, it was and has been a tactic to get Black people to walk away from critically analyzing the society and radically organizing it out of existence.
And that was the point that I wanted to grab, that he showed the timeline. He kind of explained the timeline of how this got to this point where our people believe that they can just work their way out of this. You can't work your way out of captivity. You know, the guy before him explained that you don't work your way into wealth. Wealth is inherited. You know, it's passed down. You know, and that's how wealth is developed. And at this point in the game, when you deal with Esau over here in Babylon, they're in the process of robbing their own people. You know, collapsing this system and robbing their own people. So the whole idea of Black buying power and a lot of these platforms are set up to keep our people in that mindset of being keeping this system afloat by believing that one day they'll win. It's like going to a casino every day and just hoping one day you're gonna hit the jackpot. And maybe you do, but at the expense of everybody else. All right, so I'll end it with this. Is Haggai 1:5. And it reads, now therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build a house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord. Because the Lord's making an analogy. Our people are trying to earn their own rest without the service of the Lord. You know, and this is symbolic on this side. You know, the mountain, bring wood and build a house, because the house that's being built, if you will, is spiritual. All right, but when our people hear this, they say it's vain to serve the Lord because they have this imagination that they're going to be able to work their way into wealth, which is just unrealistic for every other people here, especially Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, verse 9 reads, ye looked for much, and lo, it came to little. And when ye brought it home, I did blow upon it. Why, saith the Lord of hosts? Because of mine house that is waste, and ye run every man unto his own house. So the Lord is saying, I blew upon it. All right, you can't work your way out of this because you offended the Lord. There's no way to buy your way out of this. All right, going back to Isaiah 42, and I'll jump to 24, says, who gave Jacob for spoil and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord, he against whom we have sinned? For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law. Therefore he hath poured upon him the fury of his anger and the strength of battle, and has set him on fire round about. Yet he knew not, and it burned him, yet he laid it not to heart. And a part of that is the Lord, you know, leaving us robbed and spoiled here, poor and afflicted. All right. As a matter of fact, it's Zephaniah 3:12. I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people, and they shall trust in the name of the Lord. And that's the remnant. The remnant are poor and afflicted, but they trust in the Lord. Whereas 2/3 of our people are still poor and afflicted, but they trust in their enemies. They have vain hope in a nation that cannot save them. All right. So, matter of fact, let's go here. Because on the flip side of that is the Lord is going to actually raise us up as a nation of people. You know, we're not going to always be in this destitute position, but that only happens through the transfer of the kingdom being translated. All right. Matter of fact, this is Ecclesiastes 10:8. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. See, Esau has the ruling seat right now, which is why he has the wealth. He controls resources. Resources are true wealth. All right, wealth isn't fiat currency. It's substance. It's resources. Humans are a part of resources. All right, this is why the kingdom of heaven, it talks about the continual employment, because once you're in control of the resources, riches is an understatement. You can't really put a number on the wealth of the planet. All right, and this is why waiting on the Lord is so important, because anything that our people get now is crumbs compared to the kingdom being translated from one people to another. All right, matter of fact, I want to get this and I'll end it with this. This is Jeremiah chapter 33 and 6. It says, behold, I will bring it health and cure, and I will cure them and reveal unto them the abundance of peace and truth. And I will cause the captivity of Judah and the captivity of Israel to return, and will build them as at the first. And I will cleanse them from all their iniquity, whereby they have sinned against me. And I will pardon all their iniquities, whereby they have sinned, and whereby they have transgressed against me. And it shall be to me a name of joy and praise and an honor before all the nations of the earth, which shall hear all the good that I do unto them, and they shall fear and tremble for all the goodness and for all the prosperity that I procure unto it. Now in the NLT, when you read verse 9, it says, then this city will bring me joy, glory, and honor before all the nations of the earth. The people of the world will see all the good I do for my people, and they will tremble with awe at the peace and prosperity I provide for them. You can't provide that for yourself. As a nation of people, the Lord is going to provide it. And it's going to give all the credit is going to go to the Lord. And this is why, through the Spirit, we handle our responsibilities to the best of our ability. But we're looking for a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwells righteousness. Because ultimately, this isn't set up for us to have peace and prosperity. That's the game that they give us. And a lot of our people have taken the bait. But ultimately, that's not the reality. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying with that. I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.